How's it going, guys? John McDevitt here with the 2018 Harley-Davidson Road Glide Special. It is due for a service, so we're going to go ahead and show you in this video how to replace all the oils and the oil filter. That's engine oil, transmission oil, and primary oil. So before we get into it, let's show you what tools you're going to need for the job, and then we'll dive in. So here's what you'll need. A funnel. This is Harley-Davidson's derby cover funnel. That's optional. Makes it a little easier. A hook pick. That's going to get the O-rings off the old drain plugs. Torx 27 socket or T-handle. That's going to get the derby cover off. 5/8 socket. That's going to get the drain plugs out. Socket wrench. This is a 3/8 hex key. You can either get standard or ball. That's going to be for the transmission dipstick. And lastly, our oil filter wrench. So let's go back to the bike and get started. All right, to start off, we're going to remove the two dipsticks. One for the transmission oil, one for the engine oil. The engine oil dipstick is toolless. You just unthread with your hand. And the transmission dipstick right next to it is the one that requires the 3/8 hex key. Okay, now we'll go to the left side of the bike and remove the derby cover. Alright, so we're at the left side of the bike, we're at the derby cover. You're going to need to remove these 5 bolts. These are the ones that require the T27 bit. I'm going to use my screw gun with the T27 just to speed things up. Not necessary, of course, just to go faster. So that takes care of that. So let's move on to the drain bolts. So we're going to start with the primary. This is where your 5/8 socket comes into play. We have our oil catch underneath, obviously. So you're just going to go ahead and thread this. Alright, so we'll let that drain out, and then we'll move on to the next drain bolt. We'll go ahead and do the transmission. Okay, so we're getting farther underneath the bike, so it's a little harder to film. Here is our dripping primary drain bolt we just removed. So under there, this is your engine oil, the one that is facing the front of the bike. And then right behind that, right here, is your transmission facing down. So we're going to go ahead and do that now. The same 5/8 socket is going to remove that. Here's your transmission fluid. Alright, so then next we're going to go to the oil filter and remove that, and then lastly we will do the last drain bolt, which is the engine oil. This is where it gets a little messy. We are at the oil filter. This is where you use the oil filter wrench, and you just unthread it. And tilt it up a little bit so you don't spill it all over the place. To get it out of here, rock this back, and finesse it out. There you go. That's going to drain some, so let's go down to the last drain plug, the engine oil. So lastly, we are at the engine oil drain plug. You can see it back there. It is the one that is facing parallel to the ground. So you're going to go in this way. And let that drain out. So we'll let everything drain out, and then we will go to the next step, which is going to be replacing O-rings and gaskets and reinstalling drain plugs and new oil filter. Alright, so we got our derby cover, our 3 drain bolts. We're going to be replacing this derby cover gasket as well as these 3 O-rings. That's a kit that Harley-Davidson sells. I'll put that in the description below. You're also going to want to clean all the metal shavings off of the magnet on the drain plugs. So let's go ahead and get that done, and then we can move on to the next step. So with a quick use of our pick tool, we got all the O-rings off, we cleaned off the magnets, got all the extra thread sealant off and added a bit more of new thread sealant. So let's go ahead and reinstall the drain bolts and move on to the next step. Alright, so we got the drain bolts in. Now we're on to the oil filter. You want to add oil to the oil filter prior to installation so that when you start up the engine it pulls some oil in from here and not just a big gulp of air. As well as that, take this excess, go around the rubber rim. This makes it easy to uninstall on your next oil change. With the heat cycles, if you don't do this, this could basically fuse to the bracket and make it a lot harder to remove. So we've got that filled, we've got the oil around the rim, so we just go ahead and install it. Alright, so per the owner's manual, you're going to want to thread this on by hand and not use the oil filter wrench. Once the gasket makes contact, you want to go 1/2 to 3/4 of a turn by hand more. So we'll do that. Alright, so we're going to stay on the left side of the bike and refill the derby cover. This is Harley-Davidson's derby cover funnel. Makes it a lot easier. So again, per the owner's manual, you're going to do a wet fill of 30 ounces. You want to use their transmission and primary chain case lubricant. So we'll go ahead and install that. So after you've added your initial 30 ounces, you want to check the level. It needs to be approximately at the bottom of the pressure plate. We'll put that in the description as well. You can see the diagram that they show. And then once you have that level set perfectly, you're going to reinstall your derby cover with your T27 and that new gasket. So let's go ahead and do that. Alright, now we're on the transmission side. The owner's manual calls for 28 fluid ounces wet fill, and then you'll go from there. So go ahead and drop that oil in. And we'll move on to the engine oil. Alright, moving on to engine oil. Initial fill is going to be 4 quarts, and then you're going to warm the bike up and check for final adjustment there. So let's go ahead and add the 4 quarts. Alright, so our last course of action is going to be reinstalling the engine oil dipstick and the transmission dipstick. Engine oil by hand. Transmission is going to use that 3/8 hex. Alright, be sure to warm the bike up and check the engine oil and transmission oil and to make your final adjustments, adding a little bit more if necessary from there. But aside from that, your engine oil is replaced, transmission and primary, and you're good to go.